Dr. Terry Wahls, so great to have you here. Thank you for coming on the Restore Lab podcast. This is truly like a pinch me moment right now. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, this is basically a functional nutrition podcast where we talk about functional nutrition, functional medicine, and I really like to explore all of the nodes of functional medicine, including nutrition, but not limited to. So that's why I like talking about movement because I'm a physical therapist, and then
Yeah.
explore all the other nodes as well, which are all equally important.
Wonderful.
So to get us started here today, first, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction because we could take the whole hour doing this, but then I'll have you delve into your story a bit. So you are an incredible doctor that started kind of in the conventional world, moving into the functional medicine world as a result of your own health journey that you'll share today. You have written an incredible book, multiple books. So, the Wahls Protocol, which is a radical new way to treat all chronic autoimmune conditions using paleo principles. And you have a copy of the revised version and updated that's available for ordering as well. And then you also have a great cookbook that goes along with that, which I think is incredible for translating how to use these principles. I heard about you first through your TED Talk, as most of us did, that went viral. And if anyone hasn't listened to that yet, I think that's probably the first place to go. And then on your website, drterrywalls.com, there is a plethora of information, videos, all of your research. You've done a ton of research studies, translating all of what you used on yourself into other people to help thousands of other people. So as a clinician, as a physical therapist, and a nutritionist, you are the best possible person to ever be on my podcast. And so this is a dream. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
First and foremost, if you don't mind delving into your story, your own personal story, and sharing how you got here, that would be great.
So I'm trained as an internal medicine physician. And before getting into medical school, I was a martial artist competing full contact free sparring nationally. Gave concussions, had a few myself. Entered medical school. I thought I should really stop doing that. Everything was going great. And then in 2000, I had some weakness in my left leg. I ultimately saw a neurologist, and we found a lesion in my brain, one in my spinal cord, and they did a spinal tap and confirmed the diagnosis of relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. Now, at that time, you could either take an interferon, which makes depression worse, and I had depression issues since I was an adolescent, or Copaxone. So I took the Copaxone. And then 3 years later, at age 48, I'm clearly, my disease has progressed. I need a tilt-recline wheelchair. I am given, Novantrone, which is a form of chemotherapy, which does not help. Then I'm given the new biologic drug, Tysabri, which does not help. And then I'm given Cellcept. Now, my neurologist had mentioned the work of Direct MS, which is a charity in Canada that advocated for the power of diet in the paleo diet. So I had switched from being a low-fat vegetarian to eating the paleo diet. I was continuing to decline, but I felt like, well, who knows how much longer I would have to follow the diet to see a difference. And maybe all I can do is slow the speed of my decline, because I understood once you had secondary progressive MS, that functions once lost, we're never going to come back. And, that's what I was trained in medical school. That's what my neurologist told me. And that's certainly what I believed.
That's what we learned in PT school, too. Same
Yep.
thing.
Progressive MS, you're screwed. You just try to hang on to what you've got. You try to slow the decline.
Yeah, kind of a slow,
Inexorable decline. And that's when I went back to reading the basic science. Because I'd started reading PubMed when I was first diagnosed, and I just really got me upset when I saw that it's a progressive disease, how rapidly you end up being unemployed. And my wife said, "Terry, you got to stop reading this stuff. It's just getting you upset." Well, we'll find the best center in the country. You'll go there, let them take care of you. And we've done that. And once I'm in the wheelchair, I'm like, you know what? I know how bad it's going to be. It's going to be really bad. And I need to do all that I can, which it means reading the basic science. And I decide from my reading that mitochondrial function is key, and if your mitochondria can't generate enough ATP, you will have shrinking brain, shrinking spinal cord, and progressive disability. So I am now focused on what are the supplements that I can take to support my mitochondria. And I've got a little handful of supplements I'm taking every day. And after 6 months, I'm like, "Ah, shit, I'm no better." And so I quit. And it's
Mm.
super interesting. 36 hours later, I really can't get out of bed and go to work. And then at 72 hours, Jackie comes in with my supplements and she says, honey, why don't you try taking these again? And the next morning I could get up and go to work. And I think, like, wow, that is really interesting. So 2 weeks later, I test out the same thing. I stop everything. At 36 hours, I just really can't get out of bed. I'm exhausted. I wait 72 hours. I take my supplements again, and I'm back to my usual self. So now I'm really excited about reading more basic science studies. I have been on the Institutional Review Board reviewing research for safety issues for the previous 2 years. And I tell my IRB board that I'd like to review the studies related to the brain, so any neurology or psychiatry studies. And I get better at reading the science. I slowly expand the supplements that I'm taking. And then in the summer of 2007, my boss, and I'm beginning to have a little bit of brain fog, my boss calls me in and says, I'm going to detail you to the traumatic brain injury clinic. There won't be any residents. You will be doing the primary care for these veterans who've had a traumatic brain injury, along with all these other specialists, and you'll start in January. So I go home and tell Jack, and she says, Terry, there's no way you can do that job physically. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. And come January, I'll go, and either I can do this or I can't, and then I'll finally have to file for disability. Now, so I'm pretty bummed by this. But 2 weeks later, in my IRB packet, is a study using electrical stimulation of muscles for people who are paralyzed, never going to walk. I read this and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So I make an appointment with my physical therapist, who happens to have an athletic practice, fortunately. And he says, yep. So he gives me a test session, hurts really quite intensely, but I feel great afterwards. And so we add the electrical stimulation of muscles to my little tiny mat exercises that I'm doing. Also at this time, I discover the Institute for Functional Medicine, and they have this course on neuroprotection, a functional medicine approach for neurological syndromes. So and it's PowerPoints with synchronized audio and a big notebook of cases to work through. So I'm working through this. I have a longer list of supplements now, so it's about 9 things that I'm taking.
What are you taking at that point, supplement-wise?
Creatine, carnitine, lipoic acid, coenzyme Q, B vitamins, ribose, magnesium, and
All
zinc.
of the major cofactors in the electron transport chain and the mitochondria.
And the mitochondria. So
Yeah.
I'm taking those, and then I really laugh at myself for how long it took to have this aha. Like, what if I redesign my paleo diet based on the supplements?
So smart.
So where are these nutrients in the food supply? I've also discovered this really great article by Bowman, who's looking at 20 nutrients that are important. He says are important for the brain. So now I have a longer list. I've got 20. And like, where are they in the food supply? I go to the library. I go to my RDs. Like, we can't help you. I find the Linus Pauling Institute on Micronutrients. So now I have these list of foods that I should be stressing. So December 26th, I cannot sit up like this. I have to be in a zero gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. I can take a couple steps with 2 walking sticks. I'm beginning to have brain fog, which is probably why my boss was sending me to this clinic to try and force me into retirement. And I have trigeminal neuralgia, which for your listeners, that's like if you can imagine a cattle prod being stuck right here, zapping electrical current down your face to your jaw or to your cheek or to your eye for an instant. It could come so severely that I can't see. It blinds me for an instant. Sometimes I lose muscle tone in my legs and I stumble and fall.
Hmm.
And then when it turns on, I have to go to the pain clinic for injections. I go get my Medrol, uh, and I know the natural history of trigeminal neuralgia is eventually it stays permanently on. And when it's that bad and you move my tongue, it triggers the pain, so I'm unable to communicate because I can't move my tongue
Oh my gosh, or eat or anything.
or anything. So
Wow.
so it's very clear to me as I look at a 27-year history of worsening trigeminal neuralgia, 7-year history of worsening MS, that I was clearly on track to become bedridden by my illness, demented by my illness, and probably dying with intractable, horrific pain in a state where I wouldn't be able to communicate. So that's a pretty grim future in 2007.
And generally, when you're in a tilt and space wheelchair, it's not something that people bounce back from.
You do not bounce back from that.
No.
And so, I start this new way of eating December 27th. I go to this new clinic January 2nd. In the first 2 weeks, I just watch my new partners. The third week on Monday, I have to start examining my new patients and writing the notes. And I come home that night, and mind you, I haven't sat up in a regular chair for my meals in years.
Wow.
And I tell my wife, I'd like to try sitting in a regular chair. That's sort of a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
So I sit in a regular chair and I have supper with my family.
Wow.
And then at the end of the week, so I see and write my notes all week, and I come home and I tell Jack, I think I can do this. And then, I'm going in to see my physical therapist every couple of weeks, and he says, "Oh, Terry, you're definitely stronger." So he advances my exercises, and by probably the end of March, I am walking in the hospital without walking sticks.
Wow.
People are just like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And so I'm showing them my eSTIM device and talking about it. My chief of medicine tells me to get a case report written up and that I should start doing a safety and feasibility trial. And that was really quite remarkable. I told him, I don't know, that's not the kind of research that I do. So, Terry, I'll get you the mentors. This is so important. I want you to be doing this. And so he helps get me the appropriate mentors, gives me some coaching to get it through the Institutional Review Board. The group in Canada gives me some funding to get the supplements and the electrical stimulation devices we need to do the study. And we do our first study in 2010. We have our results in 2011. It takes me 3 years to find a journal that will publish our first results because it was so radical at the time. Because what we had done is we had taken the intervention that I used. So we had the supplements, the diet, the mantra-based meditation, mat-based exercises, electrical stimulation of muscles with task-specific exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Multimodal, I think I'm probably the very first person that ever published doing a multimodal intervention for people with MS. We did get that study through in 2014. And then, of course, the book came out in 2014.
I can't believe it took 3 years. I mean, I can believe that it took 3 years, but that's kind of wild to think all the people that can be helped.
When you do a radically new scientific idea, it is very difficult to get it published because it's a new way of thinking about a problem.
Yeah, like the world has to be ready for it to accept it in a way. The coolest thing about you, too, is that, again, you basically just named all of the nodes of functional medicine, and that was what you did in the protocol. So in that research study, and then you've done many since, let's talk about the research studies after, but let's finish with where you went from being able to walk without an assisted device, because the story gets even better.
So I sort of glossed over, and I'll probably cry here. So, in March, I'm going to walk around the neighborhood. In April, I tell Jackie, I'd really like to try biking again because I haven't done that in 6 years. And she says, honey, if you keep going well, maybe this fall we can get your bike out. Well, a couple weeks later, it's Mother's Day. And I really want to try riding my bikes. We had this big family meeting. My kids say, no, they don't want me to risk falling. And Jack finally says, well, we got us all in position and we'll try. So he tells my 16-year-old boy who's 6'5", Zach, you run alongside on the left. She tells my daughter, who's 13, you run alongside on the right, and she'll follow. So she waits to make sure there's no cars coming, and she gives the signal. I get on my bike, I push off. You know what? And I bike around the block. And, that big 16-year-old boy, he's crying. Sebby's crying. Jackie's crying. And when I relive that moment, um, I still cry because it wasn't until I was on my bike biking that I understood the current understanding of progressive multiple sclerosis is incomplete. And who knows how much recovery might be possible. So every
Wow.
day I rode my bike. And then in October, Jackie came home and said, I've signed us up for the Courage Ride. It's 18.5 miles. And honey, however far you go will be great. Now, at that point, the furthest I had ever biked was 8 miles, since my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I'd biked, 20, 30, 50 miles before that. And so I had to stop and rest a few times, but I made it 18.5 miles.
And from a physical standpoint, the sheer balance, core strength, leg stability strength, all of those things from a PT standpoint, it's like that's wild that you did that in that many months after being in a literal tilt and space wheelchair.
Unable to sit up.
That in and of itself is incredible because the amount that you had to replete and then build is that's wild.
It fundamentally changes how I think about disease and health.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm staffing clinics in the primary care clinic, I'm talking to the residents. I teach them a lot of biochemistry. They think I'm talking about the newest drugs. I'm talking about broccoli and turmeric and mushrooms and, garlic and onions. And they're amazed that within a 5-minute interchange with their veteran, I can get them fired up about eating vegetables, getting a step counter, and moving more. And so my residents in primary care are like, wow, this works. They're losing weight and they're actually getting better. And then in my traumatic brain injury clinic, I'm talking about, diet and exercise and inviting them to have an experiment of trying this. And you could tell who I had seen because those folks, still had their job, still had their romantic partner, and they were doing okay. Now, it was super interesting that, and this is back in, 2009, when I'm talking about my experience changing how I practice primary care, how I practice in the traumatic brain injury clinic. I was talking in local churches, synagogues, my TED Talk.
Yeah, you even said like a local grocer or some
Local
health
grocery
food
store.
stores.
Yeah, so I'm just going where I'm invited. I had the TED Talk in 2011. Local MS chapter says, hey, would you come talk to us? I said, oh, yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I get interviewed by their clinical advisory committee who vote to ban me as a speaker because I'm going to create false hope. Chief of staff at the VA pulls me in and wants to know why I'm banned as a speaker. He tells me that people in the traumatic brain injury clinic, some of them are complaining that I'm being inappropriate, saying that food will treat their traumatic brain injury.
Even though you're showing that it is.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had prepared for that. I had a stack of papers that I brought with me. And I said, okay, here's what I'm doing and why. And John's response was, I'm going to have to send you to the complementary alternative medicine clinic at the university because you have to talk about it differently in your chart. You cannot say that this is treating disease. If you do, and somebody makes an anonymous complaint, the Board of Medicine will come inspect your medical records and they will pull your license.
Oof.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That got my attention.
Yeah.
So then I went into the complementary alternative medicine clinic and I learned to always say, this is supporting physiology. It's an alternative to FDA-approved treatments. And I put that in all of my notes. I put that in all of my presentations to the public. And then it became less confrontational with my partners. I try to make it very clear that I'm not treating your disease. Keep seeing your medical teams. I'll try to keep your improve health by improving how your cells do the biology of life. And if that happens and you're on prescription medications, it's quite possible you'll need lower and lower doses of blood sugar meds, lower and lower doses of blood pressure meds, lower and lower doses of mental health meds, lower and lower doses of pain prescriptions. And then ultimately, I got pulled from primary care clinic. And I was not surprised by that because I figured the residents were probably getting confused by my approach compared to my partner's approach. But the reason I was getting pulled was the chief of medicine wanted me to have a clinic where I could use my principles completely. So we ended up calling this the Therapeutic Lifestyle Clinic. We had such success. I had to keep reimagining that clinic from individual appointments to small group appointments to large group appointments to class appointments to large classrooms appointments. And then VA central office came out to see what I was doing. I thought, oh my God, is they're going to be okay there. But they ended up being really very pleased with what I was doing. We wrote a grant to get
Wow.
some more staff. And that's actually when I decided to retire from the VA so I could spend more time doing my research at the university and more time teaching clinicians like yourself how to use these concepts and teaching the public.
Which is so incredible because you, again, you did this for yourself and then you basically translated it into a protocol that can be copy and paste and you're running it
yeah.
through with thousands and thousands of other people. And you have now so many studies to back it up and show it. I think people are probably dying to know like what was in this diet. And I think this is like the most interesting
Oh,
diet
yeah.
that there is. So I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I first started doing this, but I had list of foods that I needed to eat every week.
Yep.
And then I started teaching this to my veterans, and I'm like, I can't just give them lists because it would take years to get it approved in the patient handout things.
Right.
And it took too long for me to write all this stuff out. So then I thought deeply. It was going back to the Linus Pauling Institute. And so I created these very simple, memorable food guides, food rules. So the basic one is we're talking about 9 cups of vegetables. 3 cups of green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables have a lot of zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin, lutein, which are vital nutrients for our eyeballs, for the lens, for the retina, and for our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of vitamin K, lots of calcium, lots of magnesium, folates, B vitamins, minerals. Great things in those green leafy vegetables. Next category are what I call sulfur-rich. Cabbage
Mm-hmm.
family, onion family, mushroom family.
Mm-hmm.
They also speak to your genes, will help activate inflammation-lowering genes. They will help activate the enzymes that we use in detoxification processes. So two really, really big things: calming inflammation and improving your ability to get rid of the trash. Third group are the brightly colored, so beets, carrots, berries, fruits that are colored all the way through. So a lot of your stone fruits, peaches, apricots, cherries, for example. They are rich in polyphenols. Polyphenols are compounds that have ring-like structures. They are big enough that for a long time, we thought they weren't important. Turns out these compounds also speak to our genes. The bacteria in our bowels eat up these polyphenols, break them down into smaller compounds that do get into our bloodstream, do talk to our genes, and we know that they markedly lower the risk of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline.
So those are happening at the level of the gut microbiome, which is then in turn helping everything else.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So greens, sulfur-rich, cabbage, onion, mushrooms, and color.
Yum. 9
Really,
cups.
9 cups measured raw.
Measured raw. Yep.
And so that's 3 plates of fruits and vegetables. Now,
Sounds great.
and then the things we want you to have enough protein. You can either we have guides for meat, 6 to 12 ounces of meat a day, or if you're a vegetarian, combine legumes and gluten-free grains.
Mm-hmm.
And then the foods to reduce sugar, white
Never.
flour. Yeah, get rid of those. And then things to eliminate gluten and dairy. Those are unrecognized food sensitivities for many.
Mm-hmm.
Eggs are also the third most common food sensitivity. So I was severely reactive to eggs. I tell people to take the eggs out, preferably 3 months, and then you could test, can you tolerate eggs again or not? And I'd say about a third of the folks still have problems with eggs. When they
Mm-hmm.
try to take it back, they discover that, oh, my migraines are worse when I eat my eggs. My
Mm,
joint pain is worse when I have my eggs. My balance is worse when I have my eggs. But also means 2/3 can put the eggs back in and do fine with that. Because eggs, particularly the yolks, have really great nutrition.
I
So
know.
I do what
Choline.
choline is so fabulous. So I want people to take the eggs out temporarily and then recheck and see if you're one of the lucky people to get eggs. And
Mm-hmm.
after keeping eggs out for probably 14 years, I retested myself, and I tolerate eggs. So now I have eggs on weekends. It's really quite lovely.
That's incredible. So
Yeah,
there was enough healing that had like happened at the level of the gut that then you could tolerate them.
that I can tolerate again. And I'll tell you, it was hard, given that for years gluten, dairy, eggs would trigger my trigeminal neuralgia.
Mm,
It was a big decision to decide, like, okay, I'll try again. I'll risk a flare.
right.
I I
The
made sure I
worst
had
pain
plenty of
ever.
I made sure I had plenty of prednisone in hand, so if it kicked up, I could take my prednisone and that I would manage.
The eggs are worth it if you can have them.
Yes, yeah,
But the
they're
gluten and
really good.
dairy, those are staying out permanently.
They're staying out permanently.
Okay.
There's no point in risking that.
And that's with anyone who has MS and then any other autoimmune disease, would you say
Right.
kind of across the board?
Yeah, so if you have a systemic autoimmune disease, I would take gluten and dairy out. If you have a neurologic disease or
Hmm.
psychiatric disease, I would also take gluten and dairy out. Um,
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely. Dairy has amino acid sequences that are similar to structures in your cerebellum. So if you have food antibodies against dairy, it's going to cross react with your brain.
Whoa.
So,
And
it's
that
like
impacts balance.
it impacts a lot.
Hmm.
So, from the epidemiologic studies, liquid milk is certainly associated with higher risk for MS and autoimmune neurologic disease. Interesting enough, cheese is not.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so cheese may be better tolerated.
Fermentation.
The fermentation, yogurt, kefirs may be better tolerated.
Hmm.
The non-cow dairies may be better tolerated. However, I want to point out to everyone, for millions of years, humans did not get any dairy after they were weaned.
Right.
It's a recent foodstuff.
Yeah, that we needed the mother's milk and then that was it,
And then
basically.
you didn't get it. And people ask, like, well, how can you have strong bones? I'll tell you, our ancestors had much stronger bones than we have. They were eating more greens, and they walked and carried. They weren't sitting on their tush all day long,
Yeah,
and they were
loading the
outside.
joints, getting that weight bearing.
So, so if your vitamin D is in the top half of the reference range, the calcium absorption in your ileum is much, much higher.
Mhm.
And if you have all those greens, you have plenty of vitamin K2, you have plenty of magnesium, and if you are outside in the sun, you have plenty of vitamin D. Uh, our problem is not enough vitamin K, not enough vitamin D, not enough calcium, and our ileum is not absorbing calcium because our vitamin D level is so low.
So anyone with osteoporosis, and they're concerned about dairy, it's really about all these other nutrients that
It's
are
about all these
facilitating.
other nutrients that are much more important.
Yeah. So I like the way you're talking about things because I think that does simplify things of okay, what are we adding in? What are we taking out? And that
Uh-huh,
kind of simplifies things and they're both equally important, right? Instead of
uh-huh.
just saying like what are we taking out? You're kind of using the crowd out approach too of like all
Yeah.
these colors and greens and the alliums and the sulfur rich, the brassicas, everything. Those are delicious too.
And the first thing we have people do in my clinical practice and in my clinical trials is do the ads first. First week, work in the ads,
Yes.
and then do a reduction, then do an elimination.
Yeah, because then people will start to bite and say like, "Oh, this is great," and then you're not missing it as much because you're filling it with other things. It feels less
Yeah,
restrictive.
it's helpful to talk about food swaps. Like,
Mhm.
okay, last night I had bison heart mushrooms, really quite amazing meal. We made cauliflower rice.
Mhm.
So you shred the cauliflower, cook that with a little ghee. So that was really quite lovely. And then we had mushroom and kale. But you want to have food swaps.
Mhm.
So if you're not going to do your rice anymore, can you do shredded broccoli or shredded cauliflower in its place? For some people, it's such a struggle to give up the breads and the pastas. You could use a gluten-free bread and a gluten-free pasta for a transition. The
Mhm.
caveat is that's still a lot of white flour that's processed. I would
Yeah.
much rather you use squashes and pumpkins and yams,
The
and
colorful, you get a lot of other nutrients in there.
blue potatoes instead. I'd rather you use a spaghetti squash, which we have one on our counter. So I'll
Mm.
make a bison and red sauce over that spaghetti squash. So you could find a nutritionist or my cookbook to help with the food swaps. So you can still have your lasagna. You can still have a spaghetti meal if you want, and uh, we can find alternatives for some of the dishes that you so enjoyed using a swapped out ingredient.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the most important thing, and adherence is the most important thing for sustainability long term. So,
Right. You want the family to all have the same meal. Making 2 meals is not sustainable. The
mm,
other thing that I stress is, so you have mom or dad, perhaps is the patient with autoimmune condition. So when mom or dad, you're eating with the person who has the illness, it's all one meal. But I really miss my pizza and beer, and so send the person who misses their pizza and beer out to go have their pizza and beer away from you. You have
mhm,
different friends come in to have the meal you're gonna have,
mhm.
or they have pizza and beer at your house, and you go out and have a meal with your friends elsewhere. So it's that people can eat what they want away from you, but when they're in your presence, what you see and what is available is food that is health supportive to you.
Yeah, and it does have to be a group effort. That's a really good
You'll
point.
be much more successful.
Everyone's got to be on board, do it with somebody else.
Mhm.
So for the protein sources, and then we can kind of shift into the healing fats. What are you looking at for protein sources? I know
Well,
obviously paleo is
so
animal.
yeah, in our clinical trials, we would, in that first one, it said you had at least 4 ounces of meat. My preference is 6 to 12 ounces of meat, fish, poultry,
Per
uh,
day.
per day.
Hmm.
Now it's interesting, the dietary guidelines have moved that up to 1.2 to 1.6 grams, so that's actually, a bit more protein.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say that's not a ton.
yeah, so that'll increase the amount of protein. We also, when I was teaching these concepts to my veterans, many of whom are living in rural Iowa, who may not have a grocery store anymore in their small town, who may be living on food stamps. So for those people, we talked about rice and beans as a less expensive way to get protein. We talked about game that
Mm,
in Iowa, a lot of people are hunting.
yeah,
And so it
venison.
it was pretty easy to find venison. I did tell them that in Iowa, our water quality has become so terrible that I did not recommend eating fish from our streams, unfortunately.
Mm,
But the venison is fine. And I want to point out to your listeners that we had huge numbers of people coming through our therapeutic lifestyle clinic. They came with a wide variety of illnesses: autoimmune, diabetes, obesity, post traumatic stress disorder, war injuries, heart disease, chronic pain,
chronic fatigue, I'm
chronic
sure,
fatigue,
depression,
anxiety,
a lot of
depression,
psychiatric things, I'm sure.
post Gulf War illness. So, in many different diseases, the common
Hmm.
problems, the most common symptoms were fatigue, anxiety, depression, brain fog, and pain. Those 5.
That makes sense.
It didn't matter what the diagnosis was. Those were the 5 symptoms that were troubling people.
Yeah.
And those are the symptoms that we're tracking. So we teach them how to do either a gluten-free vegetarian diet or a paleo diet. And we follow them every month. They come back, we have a little group visit. And what we saw was typically within a month, people are like, they're feeling hopeful for the first time.
It's
And then
huge.
in the second and third month, they're like, my energy's better, my
Okay.
mood is better, my pain is less, and Doc, you didn't tell me. I didn't tell you what? That, Peter's coming back to life. I can have sex again.
Everything. Everything's better.
So that was so fun. It was so typical. So the men are so excited, it's easier to have erections and to be intimate again. So, and then the women in our clinic, they were so excited that they're losing weight without being hungry. Now, when we talk a little bit further, the men were also losing weight without being hungry, but they were more excited about performance. And when you talk with the women, they were also more interested in sex and having better sex life, but they were more interested in appearance.
Interesting. That's fascinating. When people start to make these changes, if they dive right in, how long
That's it.
goes by before they start to notice the reduction in symptoms?
Many people begin to see are hopeful at a month, certainly within 3 months.
Hmm.
And this is also true in our clinics, in our clinical trials. We can measure reduction in fatigue, improvement in quality of life at 3 months, continues to improve at 6 months, continues to improve further at 9 and at 12 months.
Wow.
And so, and we also, and this was another very consistent observation. People tell us that their friends are telling them, man, you look younger. You look younger by a decade.
Mm,
A couple of our patients had really wonderful stories that their children had come back to see them, or they had flown out to see their children, and their children didn't recognize them at the airport because they looked so healthy and younger.
well, and less oxidative stress, right? Better
Yes.
vitality, better energy. It makes sense.
So immensely gratifying. So then now I tell people, make a video or at least a photograph of yourself at baseline. What are your major symptoms? How are you feeling? Put it on YouTube, private to just yourself, so you can go back and look at it. Because you'll
Mm,
be amazed at the change. I have
yeah.
very few videos of myself, very few photos even of myself in my wheelchair. And people don't realize, one, how bad I looked in 2007. In those few photographs that I have are really quite remarkable.
Mm, yeah. I mean, it shows such a wild progression, and you progressed very quickly once you figured out
Yeah.
that how to basically fuel cellular health and repair the way you did.
So the nutrition was really intense. The other thing that I did, I was working closely with my physical therapist who had an athletic practice. I'm a former athlete, and so when he told me that you can do as much electrical stimulation as you want, it's 45 minutes of E-stim plus exercise to make muscles stronger. And you're pretty much weak everywhere, so you can decide which muscles you want to work on. But he suggested the quads, hams, glutes, and abdomen. Well, that's a lot. 45 minutes to each group. I could do 2 groups at a time. So I was doing that morning and evening. And then I thought, I really ought to do this while I'm at work.
Mm,
So I took my device to work and, I'd have 10 seconds of and
right.
20
The
seconds
on
of
the
work.
on
And
period.
then,
Yeah. I'm sure you had
so
it ramped up to the exact right point there.
So if I was in my office working by myself, I'd really max it out. If I was staffing residents, I couldn't max it out to the point where I was just like, I need to be able
Yeah.
to do this discreetly. So for 4 years, I was e-stimming all of my waking hours.
Wow. And this was NMES specifically.
NMES. Mhm.
Yep, because that's the
Now
muscle building.
I never told my physical therapist just how much I was doing because I was afraid he'd take my device away.
That is a lot. That's a lot of the
That's
day.
not right. It's way more than what the FDA approves.
But you were also doing, you said mat exercises.
I
I'm
was
guessing
doing
core.
mat exercises in the morning,
Hmm.
and my research team kept telling me, "Terry, you can't be doing this amount of E-stim. We have no idea how safe that is." And then
Mm,
when I got a vibration platform, uh, and then actually every time I tried to dial back my E-stim, I did not like that at all, because I could
Mm,
tell the cognitive difference.
interesting. So same thing with the supplements. You tried to titrate down and then noticed the
It's like,
difference
"Nope, nope,
without it.
nope, I do not feel as good." And
Mm,
then when
okay.
I added, doing vibration plate therapy, I could tolerate, reducing my e-stim. But I also had 4
Interesting.
years worth, and now, I bike so now my strength routine, my biking routine, so I'm physically just much more active than I was in the beginning.
And what do you do today, activity wise?
Actually, I have a lot more emphasis on strength training, and then I'm, also doing a little bit of jogging and biking,
Incredible.
and, balance training. I also very aware that since I'm now 70, that accelerates loss of balance, like, "Shit, I gotta really pay attention to this so I can
Just a
keep that
couple
up."
minutes a day. That's what I tell my
Yeah.
patients. I'm like, a couple minutes a day of balance goes such a long way. So
So
you'll
I
notice
I,
that.
do balance, every day.
And then you also, maybe we can talk a little bit about hormetic stressors because I was just watching a Instagram video
Snow?
yesterday of you going in the snow, but I know you also sauna as well, which
Yeah, yeah.
was initially surprising to me because a lot of patients with MS have that heat intolerance.
Yes, yes. So let me talk about that. So for years, I had severe, severe heat intolerance. And in 2008, I'm into my recovery and I'm biking, doing well. I wonder if I could tolerate heat now. So I went to a local gym that had a sauna, got into it, and at 45 minutes, drenched in sweat. And I said, okay, I can tolerate heat now.
Yeah, that's a long time.
So I got a sauna and I've been doing saunas pretty regularly ever since. I've switched over to a near infrared red
Okay.
light sauna. So it's
Yeah.
not quite as hot, but I like that a lot. I still do about a 45-minute sauna, so I'm
Mm.
still drenched in sweat. And then if we're lucky enough to have snow, I like going out and rolling in the snow. So I practically post that video. I had 2.9 million views on
I
that.
It was an incredible video. Like you look great. So we loved it. And thank you for sharing what you're doing in your daily life. I think that's so
Yeah.
helpful for people.
So, but again, for your listeners, if you do a hormetic stress, whether it's cold or hot, and it makes your symptoms worse, that's too big of a hormetic stress for you.
Hmm.
Please don't do that. We need to help you recover your cellular function better. And you could do the stress in tinier, tinier doses. You
I think
know,
that's a great point. And I think a lot of people, just to tell people what hormetic stresses are, they're a beneficial stress on the body if the body is able to tolerate the beneficial stress, to your point.
yeah, right. You can have a little bit of stress. You need stress from which you can fully recover.
Hmm. Yeah, like exercise can be a hormetic stressor, fasting can be a hormetic stressor, and also too much of something good can be too much too. So I think knowing yourself and dosing it
And,
appropriately.
and when I was an athlete, I know I did not provide enough time for recovery. I certainly overtrained much too much.
A lot of people do. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to slow down in today's society. Do you find that the exposure therapy, like the heat and the cold, are helpful almost entry points into maybe somebody with chronic fatigue or chronic pain that
I,
hasn't been exercising?
I think it's super helpful. And when I talk to people about hormetic stress, you start with an intentionally very small dose. So for exercise, it might be doing chair yoga. It
Hmm.
might be doing half jumping jacks just with your arms. It might be just marching in your chair. So small exercise. I want to be sure that you're back to your usual level of energy within 2 hours, that you can perform normally the next day. If you can't, you need a smaller dose. If you can, then the next day you could maybe have a little tiny bigger dose.
Hmm. That would be my plug to work with a physical therapist because physical
Mm,
therapists can help you do that as well safely and progress, a little bit
correct.
more easily.
And I think having a physical therapist super helpful. Keep in mind that the therapist is trying to make their best clinical judgment as to what is the right dose for you, and they might overshoot as well. So you still have to pay attention. Like, okay, I got great advice, went home and I did it, and I'm just completely exhausted, wiped out. Tell your physical therapist, and they'll help you fine tune it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I always tell my patients, I'm like, you are the CEO of your own body. I don't know like how that feels for you. So you have to come back and tell me, and then we adjust together. Noticing your symptoms, I think, is the most important thing. And I like that you did meditation too. When I was reading your book, I was like, and she was meditating too. So there's the other node
Hmm.
of functional medicine, the stress and relaxation, and having a high stress job and being in medical school. I'm sure stress was a piece of the puzzle for you as well.
Oh, absolutely. And during college, I had done transcendental meditation.
TM.
I quit during medical school, and then I developed MS, and I certainly could recognize that stress made things worse, but I forgot to reconsider going back to meditation. And now I'll do 4-7-8 breath work. I'll do Buteyko breath work. I also have some vagal nerve stimulators that I add as well.
Is that part of your research studies? So if you want to talk a little bit about any of your research studies
Yeah.
and those results.
So we have a really great study, the efficacy of diet and quality of life, comparing a ketogenic diet, paleo diet to usual diet. Following
Mm,
people for 2 years, we'll have our last study visit in July. So that's going to be very exciting. We'll probably be presenting that in international conferences in 27. So that will be
that's
exciting.
really exciting. So that would be comparing the Wahls Protocol to a ketogenic diet to
Correct,
usual care?
correct,
Okay.
correct. And then we've been evaluating online courses. So we have an online course, the Autoimmune Intervention Mastery Program. We've already shown that that's very helpful for people with multiple sclerosis, for reducing fatigue, improving quality of life. We're investigating that now for fibromyalgia, long COVID. Uh, uh,
Oh,
so
that's a good idea.
so that will be very exciting. And then we've just added a new study, a slightly different wellness program, Creating Health, and that is for rheumatologic diseases. So rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, connective tissue disease, systemic lupus, that's in that group. And I have just written a grant proposal to study progressive multiple sclerosis with an online
Mm,
program. And now I'm revising that program for pediatric onset MS as well. And
incredible.
yeah, and then as I said, our research, we have like over 100 papers and posters out now. My ideas, which were so radical, so crazy in 2011, are now certainly being validated. When we go to these scientific meetings, there are more people saying, yes, we have to be addressing diet, modifiable lifestyle factors. That's a very important adjunct to disease-modifying treatment therapies. And I want people to know that I'm not against taking disease-modifying treatment drugs. If your physician tells you you have active disease, it's appropriate to take them. Unfortunately, they don't have enough time to also tell you, you got to fix your diet.
Hmm.
You should meditate. You should take care of your sleep. You should also exercise. Everyone should have a referral to a physical therapist to evaluate your function now and help you design an exercise program to keep your function and to improve it.
You're such a beacon of hope. And that's why I think that this story is so important to get out to as many people as possible, because you're using techniques that are approachable for anybody. Food wise, you eat liver. Like liver is a
Liver is delicious.
is not an expensive thing. Like liver is fairly reasonable, right? And all the vegetables, again, can be more expensive and can also be bought frozen and things like that. So I think the hope piece is so important, because a lot of people are given a diagnosis and then they're like, okay, well, like this is it. And there's so much that can be done on so many levels.
Absolutely. There's so much that can be done. We've made a huge commitment to teach the public. We have courses every month. We teach clinicians because I want everyone with a systemic autoimmune disease to behold, yes, we might have an FDA-approved treatment for you, but an equally vital part of this is what you are doing, which is improving your nutrition, attending to your sleep,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you stay physically active, have deep social connections. Don't spend all of your evening staring at your phone, getting hooked into endless doom scrolling. Um,
Dopamine.
yeah, I would much rather you talk to your friends, talk to your family.
And that is true healing at the cellular level in all areas. And that's why that's so incredible. And I find it so fascinating, because you took this with MS and then you're like, hey, this actually works with all autoimmune diseases. Would you even go so far as saying all neurological, you said, in
I,
psychiatric as well?
so the next book I'm talking about is basically all chronic disease. And when you read the book, you'll see that I'm also talking about genetic diseases. That if you give your cells what they need to run the chemistry of life properly, they begin rebuilding you molecule by molecule. And if you're on drugs, your prescription meds will have to be monitored and then probably dialed back because you'll need less and less of them.
Right. Basically, that's how you build the Wahls Protocol in general. In terms of, I know you said you take, if you had to pick, we could say 3 or 5 basic foundational supplements.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I think a vitamin D plus vitamin K. And for most people, Caucasians, 5,000 units a day is a pretty typical dose. A multivitamin, multimineral, because the vitamins plus their related mineral are the cofactors that make all of our enzymes work. And so you want to be sure that you're not deficient in any vitamin or mineral. So a multivitamin, multimineral can be super helpful. Omega-3 fatty acid supplement, a fish oil supplement would be very helpful. If you're a spiritual vegetarian vegan, then I'd use a algae-based DHA supplement. And then I think magnesium would be the last one that I'd encourage.
Do you have a preference on the form of magnesium or just a mag combo?
A glycinate 3-in-8 combo I think is very nice.
With the omegas, I know there's benefits to 2 grams, 3 grams, even up to 4 grams. I guess it probably depends on the diagnosis or how much someone's getting in their diet, if they're doing the tin fish, things like that. But what would you say?
The research goes from 1 to 4 grams. I personally take 3 grams a day.
Okay. And you eat a lot of wild fish,
right.
too.
I eat wild fish. And then, so what I've done is I measure my omega-3, omega-6 ratios, and so I can titrate. That is the way to know what is the amount of fish oil that you need. Is it 1 gram, 2 gram, 3 grams?
Yeah, that's smart to use the biomarkers to check in.
Use the biomarkers because, I know that maintaining your brain myelin gets harder the older you get. And so that's why I'm tracking my ratios, because just like it's hard to keep your muscle, you want to keep your brain as well. So I'm strength trained to keep my muscles, and I'm monitoring my omega-3, omega-6 ratio to keep my brain and my myelin.
And I think that needs to also be emphasized that healthy fats are the way to improve our myelin, our brain health, our cell membranes. And
it's
so
vital.
fats are so important, which is this study with the ketogenic diet will be interesting. But even your diet has a fair amount of fats in it.
We have a lot of fat in it. We have the right fats in it. It's super interesting on the animal studies that look at seed oil fats like canola, corn oil, cottonseed oil versus saturated fats, butter, lard, etc. Feeding animals and exposing them to UV lights. If you have seed oils, you get skin cancers. If you don't have any seed oils, you don't get skin cancers.
Whoa.
Sort of interesting study. Yeah, interesting study.
Yeah. That's a huge topic right now of saturated versus unsaturated. I'm kind of like, let's talk about how great olive oil is and how great avocados are and the wild fish and things like that, and focus on those sorts of things.
And my preference is that if you're going to use a fat with a double bond, so olive oil, avocado oil, don't heat it. Use it as the sauce over the vegetables and meat that you cook.
That's great advice.
If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I have my green herbs blended with olive oil. So I have these pestos, and I'll have a couple tablespoons of pesto over whatever I'm eating. I'll do that all summer long.
So good. And extra nutrients in there too. Yeah. So, and everyone can follow you at Terry Wahls, I think is your Instagram.
Dr. Terry Wahls.
Dr. Terry Wahls. Thank you. Yes. And then your website is terrywahls.com.
Correct. So when you go there, also sign up for my newsletter so you get to have the email summaries, because I'll have interesting blogs, research updates every week. Right. So if you're on my email list, you see what I'm doing that month. Am I going to be doing free webinars? Am I going to be doing consumer courses? Will I have some practitioner lectures?
That's incredible. Is there anything, Dr. Walls, that you are currently working on or anything new and exciting? Sounds like you have some great studies finishing
Yeah.
up that we're excited to see.
So some great studies that are finishing up, grants that we're writing for the progressive MS, for pediatric MS, and then we'll see what happens. I know there may be a call coming out for using functional medicine for Medicare beneficiaries, so I'm thinking about that as well.
Whoa, that would be incredible.
Mhm.
Wow.
So
Well,
we're
thank you.
we're developing a proposal for that as well.
That would be life changing. I'm so excited to hear that.
Well, you'll have me back, and then you'll have me back when I'm ready to talk about the next book.
Yes, I will. Okay. You got it. It's a date.
It's a day. It'll be
Um,
fun.
I have one last burning question because I was thinking about you and I was like, you're in Iowa and you're talking about riding your bike. Have you ever had any interest in doing RAGBRAI or have you done RAGBRAI?
You know, I've spoken with my spouse about that, and we so far are not going to do
It's a
RAGBRAI.
lot.
It's a lot on the highways. I would
Mm.
much rather bike on bike trails. I don't really want to bike in traffic.
And it's also very hot. We did it. I actually did it back in 2016 with my family. My dad convinced us it would be a fun family vacation.
It is very hot.
It was fun. It was fun though, but I don't blame you. I think that's probably a smart decision.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so incredibly grateful for your time and your expertise. You have changed my life. I mean, you are with a foray that got me into functional medicine truly. And I think you're such a beacon of hope. So thank you for all that you do for the world. We're so grateful to have you.
Oh, thank you as well.